Hi. Hi. Yeah, we're playing with this AV stuff, trying to get it to work, so we got a couple little difficulties. Before I forget, the movie's going to start like a minute into it, so we can't seem to reset it no matter what we do. So that is what it is. So I'll maybe narrate the first minute or so, let you guys know what happens. It was really good. The first minute was so much better than the rest of the movie. You missed it, I can't believe it. No. Got you. So, yeah, my name is Justin McAleece, filmmaker from Fresno, California, right in the center of California, and I am super pumped to be here. Mark was gracious enough to invite me. I'm going to be out here, do a little keynote, talk to you guys about LEGO, and sort of what I do as a filmmaker and all that, and I thought the best way to do that was maybe to tell a story about my life dealing with LEGO and having fun with LEGO and all that. So, when I was 8 years old, I was in love with LEGO, especially LEGO castles. And I built them all the time, and that was my thing, for sure. And I used to go to a department store called Best. Does anyone remember Best? Someone. Good. I've never met anyone else that remembered that place at all. Oh, I thought it was a Berenstain Bears situation, Mandela effect. I thought I made one, but I didn't, so that's good. Anyway, I used to go to Best, and that was where I would buy all my sets. So one day, I'm sitting in the back of my mom's 1983 copper Toyota Tercel, and the only reason I mention that is because it looked like a 2x3 brick, and it was about as big. And I was sitting in the back seat, and I was counting my nickels, dimes, pennies, and dollars in my little yellow tray from the previous set I had purchased, and was real excited to go buy a new set. So that was cool, and I was going to buy a castle set. Super stoked about that. The one I came up with $37.43. For some reason I remember that, and I was going to buy set 6074, which is the Black Falcon's Fortress, aka Castle Draco. So I was real psyched about that. And went in there, bought the set. It was glorious, super stoked. Went home, started building it, worked on it. All my Lego was on my top bunk, so I had bunk beds. I had a little infant brother that wasn't doing much yet, but I could go up there all the time and play. So anyway, that was where all my Lego was, and I go up there and I build. And I had to come back down. My mom's telling me, it's bedtime. It's bedtime 15 minutes ago, so I didn't finish yet. And I crawled back down and I went to bed. So, wake up, or actually, go to sleep, dreaming about Lego, dreaming of finishing it, dreaming about, when the castle is done and I get to check it out and play with it and all that stuff. And really excited about that. Next morning, I woke up bright and early, climbed up, ascended, looked over in horror to realize that it was now destroyed, and a bunch of it was broken, and I didn't know what happened, and I was bewildered and crestfallen and all that stuff. And I said, "Mom!" And then I climbed down really fast, and I was like, "Mom, Mom!" I went into the living room and I said, "Mom, someone broke in and destroyed my castle. You have to call the cops." And she didn't do that, so that's silly. But we thought about it a little while, and it was weird because I didn't really understand this at all, and my parents sort of worked through it in a little bit of deductive reasoning and talking about sort of family history and all this, and they figured it out. And so it turns out I'm not so much a sleepwalker, but I'm a sleep climber and a sleep builder and a sleep destroyer. That's what happened. And no one broke into my home. That didn't actually happen. And so I went back in there and I finished everything up and I built it back up and was playing, revolutionaries versus the Hessian mercenaries. I remember for some reason, because I was a bit of a dork and still super huge dork. So talked about Hessians when I was 8 years old. So I finished that up, went to sleep, and surrounded by Lego. It was cool. I was also surrounded by ropes and string and some other stuff because I wanted to ensure that if I wanted to go wake up there and ruin anything that night, I would have to cut myself out. So that's how that ended. So, a couple reasons I tell you that story, and what it has to do with LEGO and what it has to do with filmmaking and all that. For one thing, I love how kids think, and that's a really important part of that, just like how their worlds are created and how much imagination is involved in all that. And the fact that they do fun things for the sake of doing fun things. And that's something great about people who are here, is because you guys are doing that exact thing. You're doing something fun for the sake of doing something fun, and that inherently has value. And a lot of times we forget about that as we get older, and we do things because it has reasons to do it, and that's sort of lame. So I don't like that as much, and I like to embrace that kid style of those things. Number two, it's important to learn young that sometimes you need to rebuild things, and sometimes things don't turn out the way you want them to. But that probably, when you look at it the right way, it's probably the simplest answer as to why it happened, and it was probably your fault. So that's easy to remember. Everyone in this room has the urge to create, which is really important. And let alone being fun, it's good to be able to make something from nothing. I'm a filmmaker, and the incredible thing about being a filmmaker is you get to sit at home at night, 2 a.m., thinking of something stupid for someone to say, and then a month or 6 months or 5 years later, you get on set and they say those things, and there's people surrounding you, and gaffers and lights and audio people, and like that stuff happens in real life. And like that's a pretty incredible thing about being a filmmaker. And you'll stand there and your buddy's like, hey, this is really good. And you're like, I know, I thought of it. So that's really fun. And that's what you guys get to do too, is you get to make something from nothing and then be there and have other people talk about it. And have someone, a kid get excited and run up and be like, hey, look at this castle. Look how cool that is. And so that's a really great thing that you guys have created for yourselves. And that's something to not let go of. Number 4, as a kid, when you're really into something, you get to focus. And a lot of times, especially because of these things and everything else happening in the world right now, it is hard to just find times to focus and zone out and not pay attention to anything else but what you were doing. And so that's very important. When you're building Lego, when you're making a movie, when you're writing a script, you get to be on a different sort of level, and you get to forget all that other stuff. And some people smarter than I have said that that is akin to worship, and I think that that's true. I think that's a good way to look at it. So, why do we create what we create? I mean, that's a question that I ask a lot of times. And what are the building blocks of what we create? So, when you guys make something, it operates on a lot of different levels, and I think that's important. I made this movie, Brick Madness, and it's about Lego, but it's primarily a comedy. It's supposed to be funny. And when you're making a comedy, I'll delve into this a little bit. When you're making a comedy, there's a lot of different levels of what is funny and why it's funny and all that. Jerry Seinfeld once was asked why he was able to work with Larry David so well. And he said, Larry David and I share the maximum amount of sense of humor that two humans can share together. And that is 60%. So I always think that's funny because it really shows like how diverse we are and what we think is funny, why it's funny, and all that stuff, and what actually makes us laugh. And so when we're putting together a script, and I had a lot of my friends help me write it and all that, but we're trying to put in a lot of different types of jokes, and just to share a little bit about what I know about comedy and how movies work and things like that. There are things that are funny that don't make you laugh, and there are things that make you laugh that might not even be that funny, and then there are things that the next time or the 5th time you watch it will make you laugh that didn't make you laugh the first time. And it's very important to pay attention to all those things. And the reason I mention this is because when you're building, there are things that people will notice right away that have like curb appeal. They're going to grab people's attention. There are things underlying that about how you built it that other AFOLs will look at and say like, oh, that's cool. I didn't think you would use that piece this way. That's really neat. And so there might be a little delay to that. And then there are little tiny stories that you guys build into what you make that really probably they live in your heart a little bit more than everyone else's, because most people aren't going to notice those things. But those are important because those are the stories behind the stories. And those are, whenever you do have someone notice that, and there's a million of those things in this movie, whenever you have people notice those things, it's really satisfying because they get a little piece of you that you were able to put into something else that on the surface didn't even exist. It's only when you look a little bit deeper. And those are the types of things that pay off. Those are why the movie that you like, you really like it more every time because it gets better with every viewing because it has depth. And that's the type of stuff that even walking around today, I saw that you guys were able to put into your creations because there's depth there. There's a lot of ideas. And as you well know, you have to, what I always tell people when they're writing a script is that I'm done with the script, and I say, okay, cool, how many ideas per page do you have? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, you have a script, it's 100 pages more or less. How many ideas per page? And they're like, well, there's some talking and this and that. And I'm like, you need 10 ideas per page. On the page, 10 ideas that you really, really want to get across to the audience. That's 1,000 ideas per script. If you don't have those, then you're not going to get the proper amount of stuff across to the audience, and there will be nothing left behind after they've watched it the first or second time. So, and a lot of it is because you're not going to execute that ultimately. You'll never get all 1,000 of those ideas across to the audience. And much like you guys are doing when you're creating, is you're making something, you have an idea and you want to accomplish that, and then you realize, A, you don't have the right pieces, or it's going to cost too much, or it's going to be too big, or it just doesn't quite make sense, or B, there's actually a better idea out there, and so you want to be able to manipulate it. But it's hard to create those ideas from nothing. It's much better to have a lot of things that you want to accomplish and find ways to do them. So any man with a how can, any man with a sufficient why can figure out the how. So I think that's important to keep in mind. So that's basically sort of the depth of what we go, and that's what I always think about when I'm doing this stuff. And perseverance over the long haul. So getting back, not so much to the story, but to my movie, took 8 years to make. So from the time we wrote the script, especially the ironic part of that is when we were starting to make the movie, we thought the idea we were coming up with and the way we were going to execute it would be done very quickly. We originally designed it so that we could shoot it in a month, write the script in a couple weeks, shoot it in a month, be done, be out of there, 3 months later have a movie, because we wanted it to be done before this other movie that we were working on at the time had been shot. That was our goal. 8 years later, finally got done, and that's a lot of time. I estimate I spent maybe 10,000 hours on it. So if you go by some people's rule, that means I'm an expert at my own movie. I don't know if I'm an expert at anything else, but I know that. So, and there's always going to be things you give up on and that aren't quite right and didn't turn out the way you want them. Even playing it here today, we're not going to get to see the first minute, but that's okay, because when you create something, you hope that it lasts beyond the first time someone sees it, or it has its own mythology behind it. If people are remembering what you guys made here 5 years from now, and they're like, oh, I really like that one setup that they had, the huge one in that room in the back, that was awesome, because that really got me motivated to do my thing. And that's what's really important, is like motivating other people to go out and create something, because storytelling is important. And no matter what changes in the world, storytelling is never going to go away. That's always going to be an important part of what we share as human beings. And that's all movies are. That's just showing how you can relate to the human condition. And ultimately, that's what you guys are doing too. You're creating worlds, you're creating ideas that you can build into something with a medium that's not always designed to build that thing too. There's a lot of workarounds that you have to figure out to be able to make it do what you want. And that, I know, is part of the fun of it, is going against the way something was designed to make it even better than what someone else thought you could make out of that. So that's really great. And that's the essence of storytelling. And so I'm really happy that we're all here engaged in that sort of activity. That's really great. So yeah, I'm gonna be quick. So what do we learn? It's good as an adult to think like a kid sometimes, brush your teeth, but aside from that, just go have fun and be in the moment and be involved. Sometimes you have to rebuild. Getting back up after you've not been knocked down is what counts in life. And so what I had to build as a little kid wasn't that big of a deal, but still, it's like, it's a big deal when you think that your thing is destroyed and you're waiting for the cops to show up to figure out who did it. Creating is its own reward. The urge to create is useful and powerful, so don't let it go. So that's a good thing. When you get older and you realize that you have your job and your responsibilities and everything else, you might not be making things anymore. But that's an important part of who we are. We're designed to create things, to make something from scratch. Being on set, it's a very satisfying thing to know that wasn't in existence the week before, the day before, the year before, whatever, and now it exists. that's a cool thing, and you guys get to share in that. Don't forget to focus. So sink in to your life. Be present. Be aware of how great it is, and remember to turn off your phones. So that's an important thing. Kidding. No, but it is important to be able to just like be away from everything else that sort of pollutes our thoughts and our minds for a while, and that's what's great about Lego, so that you can do that. Comedy is hard, for one thing, and so is building. When something works, it's because it works on many, many levels, and your job as creators is to create those levels. So whenever you see a movie or a book or anything that seems really simple, it's because thousands of great ideas have gone into making it simple. And I think whenever we see something that you guys have built that looks like it just goes together, a cohesive thought, it's because thousands of ideas have gone into making that feel like it's one concerted idea. And that's something to always keep in mind. Big projects can take forever. Like I said, 8 years, 10,000 hours. I mean, I gave up almost a lot of times. And it's good also to keep people in your life that want you to succeed, you know, and want you to keep going and want you to keep building, doing whatever you're doing. And I was fortunate enough to have that in. They spent a lot of time on my movies, so they sort of had a built-in reason to want it to show. And that's very important. In the course of making the movie, there's a guy named Carl Merriam. So he was my employee. He was an employee at Blur Media, my company, for a few years. And then we talked about making the movie and all that. And he made the mocks in the movie and did a whole bunch of building for it, spent a whole bunch of time. And he's actually in the movie. His name is Rupert in the movie. But anyway, the point is, he now, in between when we got done shooting the movie, and now, a few years ago actually, he now works for the Lego Group in Denmark. So he creates things. So he had something to do with the Saturn V rocket. He worked on a lot of sets you've seen, a lot of the Minecraft stuff. He is the co-builder of those things. So that's really cool that we got to have someone who was, you know, that sort of level of builder to be involved in the movie. One other small sort of Easter egg you'll see is that if you've seen the original Lego movie, which I'm assuming you have, the kid that is at the end of it, Jaden Sand, is also in our movie. And he was also in our movie first, not in the Lego movie. So, there's that. What else? Yeah, that's it. You're storytellers. That's something to be proud of. That was the final one. So, in conclusion, I made a movie. You guys built some stuff. That's awesome. We did it because we wanted to. We didn't do it because we had to, or someone told us that this was your job. We did it just for the sake of caring about that thing and being passionate about that thing. And being passionate is exceedingly important in 2018, especially in America. Like caring about something a lot, and not because you're trying to convince someone of something or to do it your way, just because you want to care about it. It matters. So, world needs more passion, excitement, focus, and fun. So thanks for taking a few minutes to hear what I had to say. I'm glad you guys are here at Brick Fiesta 2018. Very thankful for Mark and the rest of Brick Fiesta people to get me out here and let me show you my movie, the movie that I worked on with a lot of people. I don't like calling it my movie. A lot of my friends worked on it and were very gracious to work for scale or for nothing and put in a lot of time. And that's what you need, is a good team. So this has been very fun. Thank you guys.